The palace is quiet, but it is not the peace of order, it is the hush of fear. The corridors are lined with faded velvet, their colors dulled by candle smoke and time. Every step echoes too loudly, as if the stones themselves resent the weight of secrets they've carried for centuries. Beyond the gilded doors, courtiers whisper, their voices sharp as knives but hushed as prayers. They dare not speak too loud, for the name on their lips belongs to the king himself, Ferdinand. Spain is decaying around him. The empire that once stretched across oceans now trembles, hollowed by loss and rebellion. And at the center of this decline sits a man not remembered for the laws he passed, nor for the battles he fought, but for something far more intimate, far more grotesque. His body bore a deformity so infamous, so haunting, that it eclipsed his throne. It followed him like a shadow into every marriage, every chamber, every sleepless night. The courtiers knew it. His wives suffered it. Foreign envoys whispered it in coded letters, as though the truth itself was too dangerous to write plainly. In the court of Ferdinand VII, power was not only draped in silks and crowns, it was hidden beneath sheets, buried in shame, and yet, somehow, it ruled Spain more ruthlessly than the king himself. You can almost hear it now, the rustle of skirts as women hurry past, the muffled sobs behind locked doors, the low murmur of priests who dare not speak what they know. A nation's destiny twisted by a man's most private curse. But was Ferdinand's body the curse of a king, or the curse of a kingdom? Centuries before Ferdinand's birth, the fate of Spain was already being written in the bloodlines of its rulers. The Habsburgs and later the Bourbons treated marriage not as a union of hearts but as a transaction of cousins, uncles, and nieces. Year after year, generation after generation, they folded the same blood back into itself, a royal pact that prized power above survival. What emerged was not strength but fragility. Charles II, remembered as the Bewitched, was the most haunting symbol of this legacy. Born grotesquely misshapen, with a tongue too large for his mouth and a mind clouded by confusion, he could barely speak, let alone rule. His reign ended not with heirs but with whispers of sorcery and curses, as if Spain itself recoiled from the body of its king. Miscarriages became as common as coronations. Infants died before their first breath. Queens wasted away in their chambers, their wombs carrying the weight of a kingdom yet delivering only silence. This was the inheritance passed to Ferdinand VII. Born to Charles IV and Maria Luisa of Parma, first cousins bound not by love but by duty, his body was the next cast of dice in a game played too long. And when the dice fell, they fell hard. His deformity was not an accident, not a solitary cruelty of nature, but the inevitable toll of centuries of reckless inbreeding. He was not simply a man born flawed. He was the living monument of a dynasty that had consumed itself. If you think royal bloodlines weren't a blessing but a burden, subscribe to Echoes of Time. If not, let me know in the comments why you think kings should never be pitted. When Ferdinand came into the world, the signs of his inheritance did not reveal themselves all at once. As a boy, he was small, awkward, and often dismissed as clumsy. Courtiers assumed time would straighten his back and sharpen his features. But as he grew, physicians who examined him began to exchange uneasy glances. Whispers slipped through the palace corridors, first hesitantly, then with the cruel certainty of gossip. Something about the prince was not merely unusual. It was monstrous. The reports survived in fragments, scribbled in coded language or hidden in private diaries. They spoke of a body distorted in ways that polite society refused to put into ink. His condition was whispered in every court that received a Spanish envoy. It was said that Ferdinand's anatomy was not a symbol of virility or strength, but a grotesque burden that defied nature itself. In the classical world, beauty was defined by proportion and balance. Greek sculptors carved gods whose power was found not in excess, but in symmetry. A man's worth was measured by harmony of form. Ferdinand's body, by contrast, was a distortion. What should have been private became his most public shame. It was not a gift of masculinity but a brand of ridicule, a deformity that turned intimacy into terror. The young prince learned early what it meant to live as both heir and spectacle. Servants smirked behind their hands. Foreign dignitaries sent back veiled reports, more scandal than diplomacy. Ferdinand, still only a boy, felt the sting of humiliation carve itself into his mind. His body betrayed him, and so he betrayed others, growing cruel, paranoid, and desperate to seize control of the one thing he believed could never be taken from him: fear. If you want more untold details about rulers history books tried to hide, subscribe to Echoes of Time. And if you'd rather not, at least share in the comments why you turn away from stories this raw. The first to face Ferdinand's curse was Maria Antonia of Naples, a princess full of youth and fragile hope. She entered the marriage expecting ceremony and devotion, but her wedding night became legend for its horror. Attendants reported her screams carrying down the marble corridors, raw cries of terror that shattered any illusion of romance. What should have been union was instead a clinical ordeal, orchestrated with cushions, oils, and the cold presence of physicians. Her body endured, but her spirit did not. Miscarriage followed miscarriage, and the palace grew quieter around her until despair consumed her. Within 3 years she was gone, recorded as a victim of fever, but remembered by those who served her as a woman broken long before her death. Maria Isabel of Portugal replaced her, another young bride who entered the palace unaware of what awaited her. On her first night, guards outside the royal chamber heard furniture splinter and her cries echo. By dawn, bloodied linens were carried away in silence. She emerged a shadow of the girl who had entered. Servants noticed her trembling hands, her pale skin, her voice reduced to whispers. Each year she grew thinner, more hollow, until she collapsed entirely. The court blamed exhaustion, but some whispered her heart simply gave up. She was laid to rest, leaving behind not children, but silence and suspicion. The third wife, Maria Josepha Amalia of Saxony, approached her marriage as a duty, not a dream. She kept journals, clinical notes of each attempt at intimacy, as if Ferdinand were less husband than patient. Doctors observed, measured, and prescribed while she lay drugged and compliant. A body studied but never loved. For a brief moment hope flickered, she conceived. Yet the child did not live, and neither did she. Her death was attributed to illness, but within the palace, it was whispered that despair had claimed her as surely as disease. By the time Maria Cristina of Naples arrived, the truth was impossible to hide. She was already pregnant, not by Ferdinand, but by another man. Yet this child, Isabella, was declared his. For the first time Spain celebrated a living heir. Still, the joy was tainted. Ferdinand's paranoia would not rest, and the shadow of doubt clung to the little girl's cradle. Even success became another wound, another reminder of what the king could never truly claim as his own. In each union, the pattern repeated: suffering, silence, and death. What began as royal duty descended into ritualized tragedy. Each queen reduced to a vessel for an heir that never came, each consumed by the deformity and the obsession of the man who ruled them. Ferdinand's private curse had become a public cycle of grief, and Spain itself bore the weight of their suffering. If you believe these forgotten queens deserve their voices back, subscribe to Echoes of Time. If you won't, then tell me in the comments, should their suffering remain silent? Ferdinand's curse did not remain locked behind bedroom doors. It spread outward, seeping into every chamber of the palace, until the entire kingdom breathed in his paranoia. Servants were rotated constantly, dismissed or imprisoned at the first hint of disloyalty. He installed spies in the hallways, eyes that watched the queen, the courtiers, even his own daughter. Meals became elaborate rituals of suspicion. Every dish tasted by multiple servants, each forced to wait before he dared to eat, as though poison lurked in every bite. The palace itself turned into a maze of secrets. Peepholes were cut into walls so the king could watch unseen, convinced betrayal would reveal itself if only he looked long enough. He ceased to trust his physicians, accusing them of plots to weaken him, and turned instead to mystics and charlatans who promised miracles. Alchemists burned incense over his bed. Astrologers dictated when he might attempt intimacy. The future of Spain was left to omens, not governance. Meanwhile, beyond the palace walls, Spain was bleeding. Colonies across the Atlantic revolted, tearing themselves free one by one. The empire that had once stretched across oceans crumbled into fragments. Yet Ferdinand's attention remained fixed on his own body, his phantom heirs, his endless suspicion. While nations were lost, he measured shadows and dissected dreams. The man who could not master himself had mastered only one thing: spreading his torment across an entire kingdom. And as his body began to fail, his mind unraveled with it, leaving behind not a monarch, but a ruin wearing a crown. If you want more tales where personal obsessions shaped entire nations, subscribe to Echoes of Time. If you'd rather not, let me know in the comments why some stories are too heavy to follow. In the final years, Ferdinand's world collapsed inward, like a palace devouring itself. His body, once feared for its grotesque power, grew frail. His hands shook, his skin turned gray, his voice broke into rambling fragments of accusation. Ministers avoided his gaze, for every question became a trap, every silence an act of treason. The palace no longer hummed with ceremony. It groaned beneath the weight of suspicion. Doors were sealed, windows shuttered, and the king drifted through his chambers like a specter, consumed not by governance, but by ghosts only he could see. He stopped eating, convinced his food had been poisoned. He stopped sleeping, certain the shadows in his room hid assassins. His court became a theater of paranoia, where even the most loyal servants were interrogated, dismissed, or ruined by his suspicion. Spain was crumbling beyond the walls, yet the king was lost in a labyrinth of his own mind. On September 29, 1833, Ferdinand VII finally died. The doctors recorded the cause as gout, a polite disguise for what they knew to be true. He had been undone not by illness alone, but by decades of shame, obsession, and fear that consumed his spirit long before it claimed his flesh. And yet, even in death, the story did not end. Rumors spread of physicians tasked with preserving the king's most infamous feature, sealing it away as though Spain itself could not bear to face it. Some whispered it was hidden in the Vatican archives, a grotesque relic embalmed in silence, locked away with the secrets of the Church, a reminder not of royal glory, but of a body that cursed a king, a family, and a nation. History does not remember Ferdinand VII for triumphs in battle or brilliance in statecraft. His reign is not recalled for laws passed or victories won, but for the shadow of his own body, a deformity that became the center of his existence, the silent architect of cruelty, paranoia, and despair. His wives carried the weight of it, his court drowned beneath it, and his kingdom fractured while he waged war not on enemies abroad but on the shame within his own skin. He stands now in memory as a monarch whose greatest struggle was never with foreign armies or rebellious colonies, but with himself. His curse was not written in treaties or revolts, but in flesh and bone, preserved in whispers and locked away in rumor. A king undone not by war or rebellion, but by his own flesh, a cautionary tale echoing through time.